and welcome to Good Grief, the podcast dedicated to demystifying and destigmatizing grief with compassion and humor. I'm Nikki. I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach in Columbus, Ohio. And today we are going to be talking about coping with the loss of a coworker. So, before we dive in, it is an oddly beautiful day on my day of recording, and I have my windows open. And I was going to get up and close them all, but I said, you know what? I'm going to gamble. I'm sure I will lose. So I'm going to have the windows open so you might hear some birds. I will pause for cars driving by because they tend to be very loud. But anyway, so before I dive in, as usual, you can find me on Patreon. I'm at patreon.com/NikkiTheDeathDoula. If you become a patron of mine, all that money goes to a fund so that I can provide pro bono services to those who cannot afford them. I have somebody I have been working with off and on here a little bit who is, I'm giving her work for free. I'm providing my services to her completely pro bono. Thank you to the patrons I have already. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This podcast is a labor of love. I'm not, as you can tell, as of right now, I have no ads. Will I never? I don't know. I'm not going to say that. But I have no ad revenue from this. I don't have enough downloads to qualify for most of those. So I'm not getting any money out of this. You guys, I'm doing it because I love it. I'm doing it because I want to make people feel less alone in their grief. Will I accept money for it? Of course I will. It's the world we live in, you guys. Unfortunately, I have bills to pay. So anyway, if you go to patreon.com/NikkiTheDeathDoula, you can ensure that I don't ever really need to take ad income. But in return, you will get access to my podcast a week early. You will get grief affirmations in your inbox, and you will also get access to some bonus content. When I have interviews, I record the videos, so you can see the videos with those at Patreon. And you also get to just say, I'm a really cool person, and I'm a patron of Nikki the Death Doula. So that in and of itself is worth it. You can get memberships as low as $1 a month. All right, enough of that. Let's get into today's episode. So I was thinking about something that happened to me back in 2013. So this was 11 years ago at this point. And I share this story a lot when I'm talking about end-of-life work and grief and things like that, because it was very impactful for me. Back in 2013, early in the year, I had lost a dear friend of mine. And very shortly after that, a coworker of mine passed away very unexpectedly. Both of these deaths were unexpected and sudden. And the coworker passed away was only very slightly older than me, and I was in my early 30s at this time. I believe he was late 30s. I'm not 110% sure, but it was a lovely gentleman who worked in my department with me. He sat just a couple desks away, and he was on vacation with his family and suffered a cardiac event and passed away pretty much instantly on the beach. And he had an undiagnosed heart condition. It was one of those, there's no way to know you have it until it's too late. And his death really shook us up because it was unexpected, and he was so young, and he had 2 very young children, and he was on his vacation. He went on this vacation once a year, and just like, it was something he and his family treasured and they looked forward to. And it became a tragedy this year. And I share this story a lot in that when we experience a loss, sometimes it can be a gift to us. And I know that sounds terrible, so you got to hear me out on this. It doesn't diminish the loss. It doesn't make it any less awful for everybody who suffered it, right? And I watched this unfold at the office, and people at the office were devastated. We literally took buses so we could all go to his memorial service. But what impacted me about this, and why I talk about death being a gift in a way, is the things that happened in the months following his death. Another coworker of mine, he used to come in and chat with me. This was when I still worked in the mailroom, and he used to come in and chat with me a lot. And he came in one day and was like, you are never going to believe what my wife and I did on vacation. And I was like, okay, what? He and his wife enjoyed going to Costa Rica. And he said, we bought land in Costa Rica. And he proceeded to tell me how it was kind of a dream of theirs to one day buy some land and build a little vacation home in Costa Rica that they could just go to, right? And after this other coworker had passed away, he realized, like, we can't wait for someday. This could happen to me. This could happen to anybody in our family at any time. We need to do this now. So they went down and bought land, and they were working on plans to build a little vacation home down there. And then someone else at the same company later on had made the decision to retire a year earlier than she'd originally intended, because, as she said, I could spend one more year working here and make up a little bit more money, or I could spend one more year with my grandkids. And it's not the death itself, but the reminder that our lives are short, and the reminder that our lives are precious, and that we need to act now and don't wait for those things, because there might not be a tomorrow. So I share that story a lot in my talks, and just thought I'd share it with you all as well, and use it as a little bit of an opener for what we're going to be talking about today. Because we're going to talk about working through or processing the death of a coworker, colleague, someone you work with. Because this can fall under that giant umbrella of disenfranchised grief I've talked about in the past. And I kind of felt that way with me, because this coworker I had, when he passed away, it really was very hard for me. I struggled with this one a lot. And were we best friends? No, of course not. I knew his wife and kids and their names, and, I knew enough about him. And like I said, we sat not next to each other. We sat a couple desks away from each other. I interacted with him every day, and that's part of it. I interacted with him every day, but, we didn't go home and call each other on the weekends. We didn't text each other after work or anything. But I really struggled with this one. I had a hard time coping with it. And I know part of it was because it was a sudden loss. But, there could be people looking in on this and saying, you barely knew him, Nikki, get over it, right? And you know how I would respond to that. We don't get over our grief. But that's why one of these things, losing a coworker or losing a boss or a colleague, something like that, can be considered disenfranchised grief. And you are going to handle that grief differently than you might expect, and differently than the coworker sitting right next to you. Hey everybody, popping in quickly to let you know that I have officially become a member of the Feminist Podcasters Collective. You will notice no changes to my format, no changes to my quality of content. Everything is going to be the same. I'm just part of a beautiful collective of other women podcasters. We are a community of equity-centered independent creators. We are just working to empower each other to help grow our podcast through mutually beneficial collaborations. Our goal is just to uplift a whole bunch of diverse women's voices and, help each other out. So, women helping women. Part of that, I would like to give you guys a taste of a couple other podcasts that are part of the collective. We've had several meetings with each other. We've, hopped on Zoom calls, and I've got to meet some of these amazing women with their great podcasts. I would love it if you would check them out. But here are just a couple of other podcasts you can find within our collective. In the spirit of transparency, I receive no compensation for this. I get nothing out of this other than knowing that there's some other amazing female podcasters out there who are promoting my show on their show as well. That's it. I get nothing out of this except for the joy of knowing that I'm uplifting and supporting some other solo female podcasters.
It's exhausting trying to be productive all the time. Join me, Becca Rich, founder of the Holistic Time Coach, on Not Too Productive, as I, a recovering type A overthinker, overachiever, find the balance between getting things done and sustaining my well-being, presence, and joy. Every week, you can expect fun stories and countercultural insights and strategies that'll help you feel accomplished and enjoy your precious time on this earth. Subscribe now on the podcast app of your choice, and remember, don't be too productive. Life's too short to be busy all of the time.
Join me, Vanessa Joy, along with my co-hosts and guests on the Transcending Humanity podcast. Every 2 weeks, we cover leftist issues, queer rights, the transgender experience, random nonsense, and a whole lot more. You can find us on all podcast platforms, as well as a video version on YouTube and on our website at transcendinghumanity.com.
Thank you so much. And now back to today's episode on losing a coworker. So let's talk about how we can work on the death of a colleague or coworker. But first of all, and I always make the promise that I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but most corporations are not set up to have an immediate response to this. Some are, some are not. Like great larger groups, of course, like huge organizations that are like global, they probably have something set up for this, but not all companies do. And it's going to be up to them as to how they handle that. And if you need time off, like in the case of when my coworker passed away, the company, the day that the news was kind of announced slowly, it was given to department heads and they went and spoke to their different departments. And we were told if you need to take the day off, go ahead. Don't worry about using your PTO, take the day off. And they gave everybody the option to go to the memorial service. It was during working hours. And they said, we'll provide transportation and this will not count against you, things like that. But, some places may not have a plan for this. And you probably are not going to be allowed to take bereavement leave. Bereavement is typically only for close family members. Some companies are getting better about that, but not all. Because what if your, aunt was the one that raised you? Your aunt dies and she doesn't qualify to be in your bereavement policy. Anyway, there I did. I got on my soapbox. That's frustrating. And I don't feel like that's also labeling grief. Like some griefs are going to be greater or lesser than others. But it's something that is probably not part of mandatory training for supervisors and managers. So let's talk about supervisors and managers for a minute. If it's somebody under them who's passed away, they are probably not taught how to handle this. And at this point, I've offered this service in the past. If you need a coach or counselor, your insurance company might be able to have somebody they can send out. Bring somebody in to talk to your colleagues. Bring somebody in to talk to the people and to be available for them to process this grief. Don't just say, sorry, back to work, everybody. Let's give people an option to handle this grief. But there's going to be definitely a bit of an uncomfortable situation of managing logistics while managing this grief as well. Because we're never prepared for death. Even if we think we are, we're never quite prepared. But first and foremost is be upfront, be honest, be present with your team. Okay, if you are in a managerial position, if you have people under you and someone has died, be as honest as you can with them. Be freaking compassionate, okay? Some people are going to handle this grief very differently than others. And you will be grieving as well, very likely. So give yourself a little bit of compassion and grace with this too. And as a manager, HR might just come in and give you a script, something to read, like here's what you read. You can use that as a stepping off point, but for the love of God, be a human being too. Don't just read off of a piece of paper unless you really just don't know what to say. But be present and be compassionate for your team. Like I said, and expect to see people handle this differently. Some people might be way more devastated than you expect they will be, and some people might brush it off, so to speak. And some people grieve privately. They might have a stoic look at work and say, okay, I'm sorry that happened. That's awful. I'm going to go back to my desk now. And they're keeping that to themselves. In a personal, it's different when it's not a professional setting like that, but let them grieve on their own. Okay, we can't fix everybody's problems, especially if it comes to a large organization. You can't handle every single person perfectly, but let them know that there are resources available. Like I said, our office offered a grief counselor. They came in and they spoke with our department specifically because it was someone within our group. But they offered those services to other people within the company as well. If you would like to come in and speak with this person, please do. And there might be EAP programs, employee assistance programs, where people can get free counseling for a certain number of sessions to help them through something like this. See if you can find that and remind your employees of this benefit. There's also grief support groups all over the place, typically. Especially now when the day and age when we're connecting more and more online, there might be Zoom support groups. Find these resources and make them available to your people. Okay? And if you are an employee and not necessarily a manager, you might have to take a little bit of this on yourself. If they're not giving you these resources, you might have to look for them. If you do find a great support group specifically, like if you can find a support group specifically for people who've lost coworkers and colleagues, pass that around to your friends and other desk mates at your office and let them know, hey, I found this group I might attend, something you can think about too. And just, again, remember that everybody's going to handle this differently. And you might have a plan of how you're going to process the logistics going forward, and it might fall apart. You might have to adjust a little bit. And that's make a plan and God laughs, apparently, is what I hear. Give yourself a little bit of grace, okay? And again, going back to supervisory situations, you will be tasked with the unfortunate job of replacing this person at some point, okay? And for the colleagues and coworkers alongside the person who has died, that position is going to have to be filled again. And no, they're not going to find that person, right? That's impossible because that person is now gone. They are dead. But they're going to have to find somebody to fill this position. So keep an open mind. I specifically remember when we opened this position up for my coworker who died, a lot of us had not a bad feeling, and we were definitely not resentful to the person that came in and took that position. But it was always, especially those first few weeks, you're looking at them and you're like, that's not so-and-so. And it's not. And you have to respect and understand that. No, they are not going to be that same person. It's the same as if a person quits or finds another job and they leave and they refill that position with somebody else. It's not going to be the same person. And you have to always remember that. Okay? Give them some grace. Let them settle in. They're probably feeling uncomfortable too, knowing that they came into a position that was emptied because the person died. So they're probably feeling a little weird too. So keep that in mind, okay? Find something you can do in the meantime. Maybe set up a nice little memorial at their desk that people can come by, visit, have a nice thought, leave a flower. I don't know, something. Don't light candles. I can't suggest doing that in an office setting. It's typically not allowed. But maybe have some LED candles, have some photos, make like a nice little memorial for them in the office that people can stop by. And give people some time. Don't immediately clean out their desk the next day and throw all that stuff in the trash, okay? Take some time with that. Let people grieve a little. And then you can slowly work on filling that position and cleaning out their desk. Something else you can do, especially if it was within a department or a smaller group of people, find a way or an activity that you can do with your team to help remember them in some way. Again, you can go to the funeral, the memorial service, but maybe find a separate activity just for you as coworkers. Because if you think about going to a funeral, you're going to be mixed in with all their friends and their family, and everybody's going to be grieving a little bit differently, and they've had a different relationship with the deceased. You all have known this person as a coworker. So maybe find something you can do. Go out and volunteer for a day on something that person was passionate about. Or have a fun fundraiser activity to raise money for something that person was passionate about. I would hope, I'm a freelancer now, I don't have coworkers, but I would hope if I were in an office environment and we still had a team for this annual bike ride I go on every year that raises money for the James Cancer Center, I would hope that people would set up a team for that or do a fundraiser to raise money for that in my memory. Something like that would be great. That's really all. There's not much to this. It's like a lot of grief. Give yourself some grace. Take your time. Everybody's going to handle it differently. But there's going to be some icky weirdness when it comes to coworkers. I will not generalize most corporate offices because everybody does things a little bit differently. And some are set up to handle things like this way better than others. But you might have that corporation that is used to high turnover and doesn't necessarily view their workers as human beings and might be a little cold about things like cleaning up their desk, repurposing their equipment, and rehiring that position. I would hope not, but you might experience that. You might work in a company that will say, we're going to leave this position open for a month. We're going to leave their desk alone for 3 weeks, whatever. There can be so many things that they will do to help you through this. But I would encourage you, if you're in a management level position, please take this to heart. Know that everybody's going to handle things differently and handle it with a little bit of grace. So, okay. That's it, you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that was useful to you in some way, shape, or form. And I hope that you haven't had to suffer a loss at work. But if you did, know that you're not alone. And if you're grieving really hard, that's okay. Your feelings are, I say it in every episode, your feelings are valid. Your grief is valid. Your grief is yours. If you lost a coworker and somebody's telling you you didn't know them, they're just a coworker, you can tell them that Nikki the Death Doula said to F right off. And that you are allowed to grieve as long and as hard as you want. Okay? Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I would love to hear what you think of the episode. Please, please, please leave me a rating or review on whatever platform you're listening to this on. That helps more people find me so more people can hear this message and feel less alone in their grief. You can also find me online. I'm at NikkiTheDeathDoula.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Nikki the Death Doula. Please come check me out. Say hi to me. Oh my God, I did it again. I totally forgot the death deck, you guys. What is wrong with me? Okay, please hold. Okay, I got the death deck. Jeez, sorry, guys. Oh, I'm out of my game, apparently. Okay, so those shuffled up, draw one at random. This is a good question. All right, if a drug were created to provide immortality, would you take it? A, totally, who wouldn't want to live forever? B, nope, one lifetime is plenty. Or C, maybe if I could lock in my hottest age. I'm absolutely going to say no. I don't want to live forever, because what did I just talk about at the beginning of this episode? What gives our lives meaning, you guys? The fact that it's so short. Would I like to live longer? Sure. A couple 100 years might be kind of fun, but I don't want to live forever. That kind of loses the meaning of everything. So, no, I don't want to live forever. I would not take it. I'd like to know. And see, this is about when I remember that I forgot the death deck, because I would love for you guys to tell me your answer to the death deck question. So you can find me on my website and all the socials. So leave a comment there. Let me know what you would answer to that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you have an absolutely amazing week. And remember, as always, your grief is yours. Your feelings are valid. Grief doesn't always have to suck.